Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising, where it appears that our presenter for today has not been able to connect via Zoom.
Jim, I think I
We're
know why, because you changed time in Europe and he probably thinks it's the usual time, but HR is actually an hour earlier in Europe.
Is that what it is?
That's probably the reason, if I would have to guess.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give you probably the longest introduction to cooling the climate that you possibly have ever heard. As we wait for Rob DeLay, who's been working very passionately on a scheme to cool the Amazon. As we move into this session, I want to provide a few updates, things that I always mean to talk about, but somehow with the constraints of time and all the myriad priorities that come into play with each and every session somehow don't get to it. So what I'd like to do is give people an update today on opportunities that we all have, that you have, to participate in the activities that we're uh, convening. Because Ubiquity University has never been busier and more productive. We are building our academic partners. We have, I think, over 25 academic partnerships now. And yesterday we convened our monthly community call for our Chartres pilgrimage coming up July 6th through 12 in France. So I want to spend a few minutes just talking about Chartres because we had a beautiful session yesterday, just celebrating the spring equinox and the arrival of the beginning of the ascendancy of the sun into summer. And I've been here in Washington, D.C., where it's been dark, it's been cold, it's been snowy, it's been rainy. It's still cold out today, but you can begin to feel, and as I do my walks, there's a beautiful park near where I live in Southeast Washington, and you can just feel the spring just waiting and ready to burgeon out, even though you can't see any leaves on the trees. You can feel it, and that impulse toward life is really important. And it's worth just noting while we're at it that in antiquity, almost every culture started the year in the spring with the spring equinox. And then there were other cultures that started in the fall. But no one thought to start it on January 1 until the late Roman period, when they decided that they needed to get their generals and their armies out into the field so that they could start the wars on the spring equinox. So this was codified finally by Julius Caesar in the 60s BC. And the generals were ordered to leave for whatever region in the vast Roman Empire with their troops to get ready for the spring maneuvers and mobilizations. So they arbitrarily designated January 1. And the similar with daylight savings time. Our speaker today uh, hasn't kind of figured out that it's daylight savings time. And what we're dealing with is a completely artificial human construct made in the Pentagon by the war planners during the Second World War, and they calculated that the United States could increase its war production and people could have more time in the stores if they started to manipulate time. And in the spring, you move forward an hour, and in the fall, you move back an hour. Nobody thought that because this was out of sync with nature, there would be catastrophic side effects. It's worth just noting that the number of heart attacks and deaths go up with the changing of the times, especially the one where you go back and you have to get up earlier. That has an effect on human health. The confusion that we all experience with daylight savings time, etc., who's on, who's not, how do you recalibrate your clock, causes confusion of the mind. It also causes confusion of the body. That's why January 1 isn't really a particular holy day like it was in the ancients around the spring equinox or the fall equinox. People just go out and get drunk. They just go out to a party. And that is something that I'm going to talk a lot more about on Thursday, because I'm going to be talking on Thursday, March 13th, about what on earth is going on with Ukraine and Europe and the United States and Russia right now. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of anxiety. No one's quite sure what's going on. Zelensky, the Europeans seem sidelines. Trump is like an unguided missile, and the Russians continue to inexorably move forward on the front lines. What's going on? And that's what I'll be talking about on Thursday. So if you're interested in what's going on in Ukraine and in Europe, you might want to just tune in to Humanity Rising on March 13th. Yesterday in our Chartres call, we also talked about the upcoming pilgrimage. And I want to encourage all of you who have a sense of the sacred right now, consider seriously coming on our pilgrimage. In this chaotic world, the more that we live abundantly and develop our internal fortitude and moral equilibrium, that gives us prescience, refines our intuition, and enables us thereby to navigate more skillfully the chaos that seems to reign supreme in our world. And there's Rob. How you doing, my friend?
Jim, I'm very fine, but I was just called to be part of this panel and I have no clue what it's about. So please let me know.
Remember, we had an agreement that you were going to do something on cooling the planet on the Amazon.
Yes, I know, but I never received the date. So, I mean, it's usually I do some preparation for this stuff, but let's see what happens.
Somehow it must have gone into your spam because we sent.
I checked it. I can't find anything. It doesn't matter.
No kidding.
We'll just go. It's going to be,
we thought
it's going to be very improvised.
Yeah. Well, we
no worries.
With the flow.
Good to see you.
Very good to see you.
Thank you, George, for finding me.
Yeah.
I haven't found any communication until now about this date.
We thought it was daylight savings time. We thought it was daylight saving time. By the way, if you'd prefer, Rob, to come back on another date, we can do that. And I can be back in touch with you later on today with a date. And then
you want to fill this one in? I mean, I have no problem talking about the project. I mean, it's a very crucial project.
Good.
And but I'd like to do a structured gig, of course, with a presentation at some point, which I obviously don't have handy now.
Yeah. Guys,
Yes,
this is
boss.
normally we do this behind the scenes. So this is like you're watching the sausage machine of Humanity Rising. That aspect most people prefer not to look at, but
It's
here we
it's
are
like
in
opera.
real time.
It's like opera. All things go, there's all kinds of problems behind the scenes, but at the end, it still looks like opera.
You are a generous man, sir. Well, good. Well, listen, let's just dive in then. Just give us an update, Rob, on because we had you on Humanity Rising last year and the year before. And so you've given us periodic updates for the Cooling the Planet project that you've got going. So why don't you just take a few minutes and tell us what's going on and what you
I'd
have
love
planned.
to. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me start at a little bit different level, if you don't mind, since we're very improvising anyway. Let's see what's happening right now geopolitically, which is related to the stress of the fact that we found out that our planet is limited. It is limited in a sense that we are with a lot of people, we are exploiting this beautiful living planet a lot, and we're damaging it, and it's getting to our throats. And I would say that there is a common assessment between the ones that now want to, divide and conquer the world, and the ones that want to come together to revive the planetary abundance. It's simply understanding that this current situation is not sustainable, and it's not irrational to come to the conclusion, well, if we can't stay alive in the current situation with all of us, there's two ways out. One is let's find a way to do it anyway, and that's what cooling the climate is all about. And the other one is, well, tough luck for the buggers who are going to lose it, but I'm not going to be one of the losers. And that's what you get right now. And that's a geopolitical race to basically three crises: energy, the destruction of nature, and the transformation of land, which destroys the biology of the planet. And the third one is, of course, resource management, with all the ridiculous transactional things about I want your rare earths, etc. So these two movements are actually part of a same fundamental analysis. We can't go like this, and the systems that govern us, which are perfect for the 20th century, are not working at all for the 21st century because of a lack of vision, but also because the systems are so bureaucratic. Everybody is gotten into a swamp, and that nobody can get 1 foot ahead. And that doesn't go just for governments; it also goes for large corporations and NGOs. We've gotten ourselves in such a mess of decision-making inertia because of procedures that are too complex for anybody to understand, that basically we're stuck. So best case scenario, I only think in best case scenarios these days, because all the other ones basically we might just go to the beach and drink caipirinhas till the show is over. So the best case scenario is actually that what is happening right now destroys structures that don't work, but now we have to step in and provide structures that do work. And so then I come back now a little bit to my story. My story starts with the fact that I don't have an immediate solution for the energy crisis or the resource crisis. Mind you, I have some longer vision on those, especially with the possibilities of accelerating the understanding of biomimicry. But let that be aside right now. The climate crisis is in many ways a stress multiplier on societies, which makes them brittle, makes people fearful, embracing all kinds of bollocks that's being quite systematically actually dispersed by evil parties.
Let me stop you there, because I think you just made a really profound point Rob, that I'd like to have you expand on. Because when you say that climate change is a stress multiplier,
Yes.
that's really important for all of us to take in. You know, we tend to think of climate change as an object outside of ourselves, like a hurricane or too much rain. But the impact of that is to multiply the stresses on the human, I would say, physical, social, and mental infrastructure.
All levels, absolutely.
Yeah. So say more about that, how that happens, because that's what makes it the major crisis of our time. It's affecting everything and everybody everywhere in terms of enhancing stress.
Absolutely. But in a sneaky way, because you can't point at it.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, the price of eggs going up, yes, that maybe has to do with bird flu, that maybe has to do with all kinds of other factors, but you have to go several levels down to how the production systems work, how viruses, which are actually there's so many viruses in our cells, in the world, in our atmosphere. The problem is not the viruses. The problem is where they get really problematic and how you deal with them. And that's basically upsetting the intelligence of the biosphere, which is completely underestimated. So, so you have to go a few levels down till you understand that there's a direct connection between inflation, food inflation, and the price of eggs, and more and more kind of pandemics, whether they're in humans or in people, that are connected to us disrupting the system.
Exactly.
And so that's why it's so difficult. Everybody says you can't say that that hurricane is stronger because of climate change. Well, actually you can, but then you have to understand that the so I operate from the Earth as a living system, as a supra a large being that has integrated processes in metabolisms to basically create the conditions for life to thrive everywhere. Dealing with the influx of the sun and the cold of the universe, it has created a beautiful atmosphere to protect us. It has created all kinds of species that work together in ecosystems that basically have been working for millions and millions of years to find some balance. And that's a dynamic balance. It changes all the time. But our current destruction of the biosphere basically disrupts all these incredibly intelligent and meticulous processes that we're only starting to understand now. The way fungi work in regulating processes. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. We think we are so clever. We have an internet. There's dozens of species that have been having had their internet for millions of years doing it, whether it's bees or ants or fungi, and we're a stupid species. We think we're so smart. We're just a small new exponent that is just learning the amazing intelligence that's embedded in the evolution, and we say, oh God, are we smart? But actually, we're so silly. We have to wake up to the larger intelligence of which we are a part. Okay, I'll
Yeah.
stop here with my rant.
No. I mean, one gets passionate when one sees the stupidity. You know, when President Trump, talks about drill, baby, drill, you become speechless at both the ignorance, the arrogance, and the mental instability that implies about the individual making a statement that in the face of what is clearly the most imminent crisis facing humanity, a president of the United States would even talk about drill, baby, drill. I mean, you don't know quite how to even talk about it. It's so off the wall.
Can I mean, since we're here anyway, sort of à l'improviste, can I give a few ideas of what I think is happening? Because there's so many people confused by the different stories that are out there, some which are disinformation, which is really produced actually to upset and derail people's thinking. At the same time, okay, let's try to think from a planetary level, not from our individual conscious level, but from the emergence of a self-consciousness of the planet. Okay, let me repeat that. The emergence of the self-consciousness of the planet, of which we are a crucial part. So you could see it as a sort of a birth process that might go well, right, or might go wrong, where the whole planet, with all its technology and connectedness that we have now created with 8 billion people, etc., is interacting with all our minds, and slowly in that process is gaining self-consciousness as a planet. So the system change we are in is not something like the end of history or something like that. No, it's a major evolutionary jump to the next level of life as a whole, in which we do play a crucial role, mind you. We're not, in that sense, we are an important species, especially because of the connectivity that we are right now bringing to the Earth, and everybody is right now sending information to everybody on everything, and that as a whole forms that self-consciousness of this conscious planet. It's very difficult in the beginning to grab it, but if that is true, and we can get in sync with the fact that our well-being is completely connected to the well-being of the whole, then slowly we can get in sync and start understanding that we can co-steward this planet as a species in combination with the whole intelligence of nature, being really in the cockpit of an intelligent planet. Okay, I'll stop here again because otherwise I talk too much.
Well, no, I think you're making a seminal point. And, I've often reflected that we in our generation are possibly the first generation to really be able to think clearly about why Gaia produced us.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has a lot to do with what you're saying, that Gaia needs a self-reflective, conscious species to be able to leave the planet and travel to other planets, star systems, galaxies as a representative of Gaia.
Yes.
That in some sense, we've been cultivated by evolution to be ambassadors of Earth. And it's so extraordinary to me that right at this moment, when the same generation were putting, a man in the moon on the moon and in the 1960s and 1969, we're sending probes like the James Webb telescope way, way out into the galaxy. That's the same time that all the extraterrestrials started to show up. And that we, in order to communicate with them, need to up-level our consciousness and learn the language of consciousness, learn mental telepathy, learn remote viewing, so that we can do what the birds and the bees do, and that is communicate. Their internet is mental telepathy.
Yes.
So
exactly.
So this moment of humanity, of both duress and opportunity, is very much around our coming into awareness of why we're here.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But we have to understand that it's an experiment and it doesn't necessarily will go through. So it's up to us actually to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, David Suzuki says that only 5% of all the species that the Earth has spawned are still here. That 95% with all the ice ages and floods and extinction events and so forth and so on. So survival is, you're right, is not guaranteed. And the
Not at all.
experimentation intensifies as your complexity increases.
True. On the other hand, of course, there's a lot of iterations of species. I mean, we all know right now that if you look at a sparrow in your back garden, basically his or her ancestor was a dinosaur, which is a pretty amazing transformation. So we are adaptive, and you know, I do think that we really run the risk in the next decades or so, no, decades, I shouldn't say or so, to have a complete collapse of human population, which I think we can avoid, but only if we wake up to the real action that is needed right now. But if it would collapse, I don't think the human species as such would collapse as a whole. I remember James Lovelock. Later he retracted his comment, which was roughly like this: well, probably there will be a few hundred breeding couples of us hanging on in ecological niches around the Arctic, and then they will take it from there. So he later retracted this a little bit, but I think it is quite possible that very small numbers of us will survive a collapse. We're so interconnected. I mean, any city, I mean, it's you know, it's nine meals away from a revolution, and and that food always being brought in systems that needs, you know, transport that moves, etc., internet that works. It's amazing, and people, I must say, so far the system has become has proven to be reasonably resilient, but at some point it won't. And then once you're beyond that point, then you know, she's really going to hit the fan real time, and it's not going to be a funny thing.
No, for sure, for sure. Well, let's turn to your project, Rob.
Okay. Yes.
You're a Dutchman. You've got a very successful ecotourism company that operates, I think it's in 17 different countries. You're a serial entrepreneur. You've done some stuff, but when you went to Brazil, where you live in Brazil much of the time, right?
Well, actually, so right now I'm traveling more to basically tell my story. I sold my ecotourism company. I only have a few parts left in Indonesia, in Mexico and India, that provide me with income, so I can basically independently do whatever I'm doing. So the story goes like this. I've been aware of climate change for a very long time, since James Hansen talked to the Congress, and when I when I sold my company, I sort of opened up to the world and said, "My God, they haven't done nothing about it," and I started to thinking about how could you solve this problem. Of course, it's obvious you go straight into the IPCC work, and you read it and you read it. At the same time, I was doing something very different. I actually bought a small valley in the tropical rainforest in Brazil, not in the Amazon, in the other one, the Mata Atlântica, to restore that area, to rewild it, to reforest it, and do agroforestry stuff. And to my amazement, I saw how fast things improved there. The temperature would come down, springs would come back, and what was maybe the most delightful thing, it became a sort of a refugee valley for bird species, which have maybe quintupled or something. I never did the counting. So I realized how resilient nature is and how fast these conditions, even on a micro level, change. Then, looking at IPCC, they basically focus on greenhouse gases. Now, mind you, greenhouse gases are a problem, and we should do something about it. That's obviously not going well, in any way or form, we're just increasing the acceleration of greenhouse gas emissions. And now nature is actually also dying back and in increasing that problem. So once you understand that the IPCC model only covers part of what is going wrong, and you see that the other part is that nature, the biosphere, basically creates the conditions for good weather and climate. And if you hack away at it, then basically you're hacking away at your air conditioner. And that's not so much through the carbon cycle in the tropics, that's through the water cycle. So trees or forests, they evapotranspire for every molecule of sugar made in photosynthesis. They evapotranspire a couple of hundreds of molecules of water. Now, it costs a lot of energy to boil water, as we all know, when we make a cup of tea. And what happens is that that energy is basically taken from the forest floor, and it whirls up in vapor, in water vapor, and then it also sends up bioaerosols, small particles that the trees make, and together they form clouds, rain and wind, and export energy out into space. Large forests, especially in the tropics, are designed as air conditioners, two-phase air conditioners. Once evapotranspire water through the leaves and take that heat up. Secondly, at cloud level, when the gas goes back into liquid water, actually the heat that was taken at the forest floor is now shot out of these molecules again, but this time a large part immediately disappears into space. The process is a little longer, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But anyway, it's a two-phase air conditioner, which is not in the IPCC models in any way or form. So at least half of the temperature rise globally, and more even of the extreme weather events, acceleration, droughts, heat waves, hurricane stuff, are actually not caused per se directly by CO2 increase. They are caused by the destruction of ecosystems, and with the atmospheric cooling processes involved in the evapotranspiration, cloud forming, rain forming, wind, and export into outer space. That process is a little bit more complicated. You can't model it because basically it is different at any moment of the time, at any surface that the sunlight comes into. So CO2 is easy. I mean, you have the Keeling curve. You just, it's a straight line on a graph, and there you have it. This one is much more complex. But scientists, if they can't put something in a spreadsheet, it doesn't exist. Well, it does.
As it turns out. And how aware, for example, is the government, Lula's government in Brazil, to what you're saying? Are there any government officials that are paying any attention to what you're saying?
I think it's slowly trickling through. I've no idea. You can explain a 5-year-old that if he or she stands under a tree, it's much cooler than if you stand next to it. That part anybody gets. The part that's actually through evapotranspiration, through the water evaporation through the tree, it actually cools. I think some people get, but why they can't transmit that to, I think it has to do climate change basically originated from people who studied climate. And the definition of a climate is that something has to change over 30 years or longer. Now, if you look at evapotranspiration, or basically in the Amazon, for instance, if it stops, if the trees stop evapotranspiring, you turn off the air conditioning, the temperature goes up within hours and days. not in 30 years from now. So it's a much more agile and fast system,
Right.
which you can
Exactly.
also turn on. You give water to the plants, their leaves open up, they start happily evapotranspiring again, and without the rest knowing it, it's actually cooling the surroundings.
Mhm.
I don't know why it's so difficult to get it.
Uh, just as a side note, but it's really important, is the matter of geoengineering.
Yeah,
Um, because, cooling the climate and manipulating the systems, there are governments and projects that are underway that are engaging in all kinds of geoengineering without public awareness or even really proper democratic approval. Tell us what
yeah.
you know about geoengineering.
Well, I've been in some geoengineering groups for a while just to understand what they were doing.
Yeah.
And first of all, they're really, people who understand how dangerous it is what is happening right now, and they're really honestly trying to reverse that. Although there's some also want to make a big buck because anybody understands that if you have, you make these big machines to suck CO2 out of the air. Uh, I mean, it's a complete white elephant, except for the fact that you maybe get a few $1 billion of government subsidies in order to do that, and everybody can buy new villas and yachts. So there's a small group that I would say they're not honest, but most of them are absolutely honest and trying to take on because they understand what is happening. Now, what they don't understand is if you work from Lovelock's Gaia theory, then you basically say, look at what nature does to resolve this problem. Nature has been doing that for a long time, and there were all kinds of upheavals and ice ages, which has to do with cosmic changes and solar flares, what have you. But in general, the process has gone more and more in the direction of getting the the right conditions for life to thrive, which for terrestrial life is usually around, let's say, 20 degrees centigrade or whatever it is. What is that, 17 Fahrenheit? And so, and it has succeeded in many places over the earth. So why don't we first look at how nature regulates these processes? So, increase cloud cover, absolutely. But you don't have to get machines to do cloud cover. We already have a machine. It's called a tree, or it's called algae, because algae actually they give up a so-called DMS, which is a volatile molecule that makes condensates water vapor above it and then makes clouds and rain. Coral reefs, if healthy, they give off substances that make clouds and rain. All systems, especially in the tropical zone, are complete climate regulators. So why don't we look at the incredible intelligence there? And I wouldn't discount the possibility that in some cases geoengineering might help on the fringes. To support a little bit. One of the things that I personally like, for instance, is okay, the glaciers are going in the Andes and in the Himalayas, which is a terrible problem for a lot of I would say about 3 billion people in total in Asia and
Ah,
in South America.
huge.
So having a tube at night pumping water and spraying water over it so it freezes and thickens that might be a small tweak to the whole thing. The big tweak is actually to get your forests cover from the ocean all the way to these mountains recovered up to a certain extent. It doesn't have to be 100%, so that the biotic pump pulls in the moisture and re-rains and recycles the rain up to the foothills and up to these mountains. That's the real solution. I wouldn't say that these small technical things can't help, but I think it's tinkering at the edges.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a valuable point that you're making, that what's happening now is that they're secretly basically engaging in all kinds of geoengineering without telling us,
Yeah,
while not doing anything to stop those activities that are causing the problem in the first place. What they're trying to do is keep causing the problem and then artificially manipulate the weather without thinking about consequences, and
exactly.
and then not telling the public because they know the public won't approve. And this is what the Bill Gates of the world are doing. I know that he's engaging in a lot of geoengineering schemes, as are others, and including electromagnetic pulse utilization and manipulation and so forth and so on. And the point that you're making, which I think is good, like in the Andes or the Himalayas, maybe you should have some pump to, to spray water at night. So you can do a little geoengineering, but at a very small scale with a very specific purpose in mind.
Yeah, so in general, I would say first look at how nature resolves
Exactly.
it, and mimic that. And if that doesn't work well, I honestly don't think that I think it's completely hubris to think that humans are able to geoengineer ourselves out of trouble.
That's right. That's right. Now I know the COP, the Conference of Parties this year is going to be in the Amazon. So presumably, you're gearing up for quite an event, and I'm sure you're going to have your Cooling the Planet project front and center. Um, Tell us a little bit more about how you're evaluating the COP and what do you think the possibilities are? Because this is a big COP coming up. This is
Yeah, the only problem is that Lula didn't think of the fact that Berlin, the city where it is, simply doesn't have the infrastructure. I'm trying to get rooms. The last deal I have now for a house of 4 rooms, because there's a lot of people coming in, is $4,000 per night. So a lot of people are already saying, when we can't go because we don't have the money. And Brazilians are very they like to use opportunities to make money, or rather abuse the situation.
$4,000 a month. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's just ridiculous. But anyway, let's say that somehow it will work.
like the
Maybe
Hyatt
they'll move
Regency.
it to Brasilia or whatever. Okay, let me just explain again, cooling the climate project in detail. So first of all, I just explained that half of the climate solutions are not in the IPCC models because they don't focus on the regeneration of ecosystems.
Yeah.
The largest cooling organ of the planet is the Amazon rainforest, together by, of course, with the other rainforests, the Congo, the Indonesian rainforest, and what have you. The difference between the other forests is that the Amazon rainforest is basically a large rain machine that rains on itself. It produces 70% of the rain that falls on itself. So it's an irrigation and cooling system that is
Amazing.
that needs to have this huge size in order to keep pumping this atmospheric water around. That has been degraded because of the destruction, especially on the northeast and on the southeast side of the forest. So you see these extreme droughts that have happened in 2023 and 2024, when the largest river system of the world almost disappeared. Mind you, the Amazon is doing 15 times the Mississippi, in case anybody thinks that the Mississippi is the largest river in the Americas. No, it's a trickle compared to that. Now, so that almost went away because this atmospheric rain machine called the biotic pump collapsed. And you saw immediate spikes of global temperatures. But the problem also is it's a self-reinforcing feedback loop, because if the trees and the roots are not getting water, basically the evapotranspiration stops, the trees die, you get less clouds, you get more sunshine coming in. So it's a self-reinforcing feedback loop. Okay, now how do you solve that in the Amazon rainforest, which is a completely chaotic situation with a lot of corruption, mafia kind of resource extraction, etc. The idea is very simple. Give all families that live in the Amazon rainforest, in the forest, not in the cities, give them an income for protecting their own area. Forest protection, reforestation, transition to agroforestry income, which usually is a lot higher than if you, for instance, do just corn on a field or sugarcane. So give everybody money. Start tomorrow. All the families, about 1.5 million families, it's not even that much. It's probably some 10 million people that will have immediate positive impacts, because on average these are poor people. So give them access to communication, give them access to solar energy, and connect them to a banking system on an app. Everybody gets a cell phone, they get money, and we monitor their area and see if they're really doing what they're supposed to do, which is not hacking away at the trees, but saving the forest or reforesting or transition to agroforestry. Okay, so the basic idea is pretty simple. Now the question is, how do you get money into the hands of 1.5 million families that live in very remote places? Okay, for now we still have to go with Starlink, but there's going to be other systems as well that basically connect all these people in the forest with an app, and if they can then bring their land into that system, and we can monitor it with them going around with their with an app on their phone showing that things are growing, let's say, and we also look at from a satellite, then they basically get continued money to support their guardianship, and at the same time the forest gets improved in so many places that its processes, especially of the evapotranspiration and cloud forming, rain forming, will improve. Now, you need some extra strategic recovery with large projects on certain places. Mind you, this is as big as the contiguous United States, so it's a big place. So there's additional stuff to it, but the basic idea is give all the people in the forest money to protect the forest. That's it.
Easy peasy. But it's deceptively simple, but I appreciate it. And it would be so empowering to those 1.5 million families to be provided the resources to protect and regenerate the rainforest, under their jurisdiction. It'd be really, have you done a costing as to how much would go per family or how much altogether it would cost?
We think that the system will become self-sustaining after a couple of years, because we can, the carbon credits that are created in it can use as a finance mechanism, but it will have a lot more beneficial effects than just getting a bit of carbon out of the air. So initially it would need about $2 billion per month for a series of years. We don't know exactly how long, but at least minimum 2 years, and then it would slowly trickle off. So the middle layer is a platform that does all this onboarding of families, their terrains, and then monitoring what is happening. But basically, we have all that technology, and then make that in payouts to them in their wallets, and they got money. So you need a middle layer, which probably costs about $10 million. If anybody is in the room, please let me know. But actually, the first part that we need is about $200,000 to do the design sprint. We got all the partners that already do part of this technology. Like, I talked to somebody who has an automated payout system in Kenya, paying 40,000 smallholder farmers on a regular basis with over their phone. Just to give you an idea, there's the monitoring. Everybody has seen these things on the That's basically all in place. So there's a lot of the parts of the puzzle that are already there. We have to stitch them together into a platform, and then put money, big money in from the world to save this largest cooling organ of the planet. We did the calculations. My guesstimate is that the Amazon, reviving the Amazon alone would probably bring local temperatures down by 0.5 degree centigrade. If we then include the African tropical zone, South India, Southeast Asia, the north of Australia, we could reach a total cooling capacity of 1C. So basically getting us back from the 1.5 we're already trespassed, and then over 20 years basically get the curve down while we're working also.
Extraordinary, extraordinary. Well, Rob, thank you so much. I think that should probably do it for today. You've given a very good summary. I'll circle back with another date in about 6 weeks' time.
Yes, give me some heads up too, so I can prepare.
And so forth. Where do we find you today? You have a fan on, so you must be somewhere hot.
Sorry, you can find me on LinkedIn or say hello to me on
no.
email.
Where are you physically?
I'm in Salvador de Bahia in Brazil right now.
Yeah, you're in Brazil.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Good. Well,
so sorry, I was a bit unprepared, and thank you for having me anyway.
That's quite all right, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
And that'll bring us to a close
for. Don't shut down until you've told people he can come to the after chat and they can come to the after chat.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Thank you.
You could join the after chat, Rob. That would be great. You can see the link in the chat box that Stan just put in, and you receive the link in your Zoom reminder for today. But Rob, really appreciate you coming on for this impromptu, and we'll then see you all tomorrow here again on Humanity.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Rob. Be well.
Bye, everybody. I hope to see you in the after chat.